Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Origins Clamp Champ, the heroic master of capture. Now, this is a deluxe action figure. He's part of the same assortment, I believe, as Battle Armor He-Man, Skeletor, Ram Man, but he's been shipping a little bit later than those three, but he is apparently starting to creep out there. I know there's several pre-orders showing him shipping very, very soon. And like Ram Man, this is another character who was not a deluxe figure in the vintage toy line, but I gather his larger accessory is kind of what shifted him into that. But we also get an interchangeable head and hand and the extra little weapon there, so they've really plussed him out to make him worthy of the deluxe card back. And this is that wider deluxe packaging. It's even got the beautiful artwork of Clamp Champ up here in the corner, which is a great nod to the vintage toy line where the deluxe card backs also had the additional artwork. And as we rotate it around to the backside up at the top, that continues with more beautiful artwork where you can see Clamp Champ attacking Ninjor. We've even got King Randor on there, which is great. I love the implication that Clamp Champ caught Ninjor's arrow in midair and just is snapping it with his hand. How amazing is that? Clamp Champ is so great. And then down below that, we've got our cross cell. As you can see, it does show, the older Battle Armor figures and like a previous wave, which is why Clamp Champ was definitely intended to be out before now. And then you can see we've got our cross cell there. The action feature callouts next to the cross cell that shows you how the clamp trigger works, which I'm really excited to check out. So let's go ahead and get this guy ripped off this blister card and we will get a closer look at him. Okay, before we get to the figure itself, it is worth pointing out that Clamp Champ comes packaged with that same mini comic that comes with the other deluxe figures, Ram Man, Battle Armor He-Man, and Battle Armor Skeletor, so he is featured within that comic alongside all of them. Since those other figures have been out for a while, you likely do already have this, but the other thing that it comes with is the little sheet that they've been including with a lot of the recent figures, which I really like, that breaks down where all the swappable parts are on the figures. Which is something that I think is awesome that they're putting this in there now and showing people that the parts are meant to be swapped out, removed, and, mixed and matched with other figures. All right, we got our Clamp Champ outside of the packaging. Once again, I'll bring in the tape measure to show you that he stands just under 6 inches tall, which matches up with the stance of these figures throughout the Origins lineup. And of course, just like in the vintage line, Clamp Champ does share a lot of the parts with some of our pre-existing figures, mostly like He-Man, as he does have kind of the standard body, the standard furry shorts, furry boots. He does have the smaller wrist bracers on both arms, but it's just like with the vintage line, which is exactly what Origins has aimed to do. He does have this nice armor piece here, which I'm certain we will see reused, but it's really cool because it's worth noting that unlike on the vintage figure, which was a hard plastic, this is a softer, flexible plastic. So it does detach off the figure on the sides, just like the vintage does, but you could see it's a softer, more pliable plastic instead of that harder kind of shell-like plastic that was used on the vintage action figure. And then we do have a brand new head sculpt for Clamp Champ. In fact, we have 2 of those because since he's a deluxe figure, he has swappable heads. So this does differentiate itself from the vintage figure, which you will see when we do the comparison time later on, but that has been pretty par for the course with Origins. They changed it so that he does have like a teeth gritting pose there, instead of the kind of almost like a half smirk he had going on the vintage action figure. But we do have a swappable head, so if you want to do that, you can easily pop the head off by pulling it off that same ball joint there. You can pop on the new head in its place. The position of his eyebrows almost gives it a bit of like an evil smile. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But it's pretty cool that we've got the option there, and that's one of those things that the deluxe figures have all offered so far is interchangeable heads, so that way you could pose them with whichever your desired head is. I actually do prefer the more standard head, but I do like having the options. I think that is really nice. So the other thing he does have is swappable left hands. So when you pull him out of the package, he'll actually have this open hand, the open hand there. And if you want to, you can easily swap that out just by pulling it right out of the socket at the wrist. You can see it's just got that little peg. And now you've got two gripping hands instead. So that way you can put his signature clamp in either one of the hands, or he does have two accessories. So before we get to that, let's go ahead and break down articulation. In case you were not already familiar with it, it'll match up with what you've got with all your basic figures in this line. You got that ball joint at the head, so good range of motion there. The arms can go up and down, forwards and backwards. You've got swivels at the elbow. You've got a single joint at the elbow. You've got a swivel at the wrist and a hinge at the wrist. You can turn the waist side to side right there. You've got the ball-like hinges at the thigh, so legs can go outwards, forwards, backwards, swivel at the knee, single joint at the knee, swivel at the boot cut, and then the ankles can move forwards and backwards as well as rock side to side. And of course, as I showed you guys, totally interchangeable. You can easily pop the shoulders out of the sockets. You can pop the wrists out as I showed you. You can pull the torso off at the waist. You could pull the boots off at the boot cut. And this is totally done on purpose. That's because this entire line has the mix and match option in case you feel like kind of swapping some parts, doing some kit bashing, making your own customs. So, accessory time. Now, before we get to the one signature accessory, I do want to point out that he also comes with this little smaller clamp, and this is pretty cool because this has roots in the 2000X toy line. It was included with the Clamp Champ Staction, the little mini statue figure done by NECA. It's one of the Four Horsemen's kind of inclusions for Clamp Champ. They gave him this little mini clamp. We also had it in the Classics line, so it's kind of neat to see it included again for Origins here. That's not something that came with the vintage figure. It's just solid plastic as far as like the paint deco goes. There's no extra paint deco or anything. It is a little pliable, so you could totally like, you know, put this around a figure's neck or something. So you've got that as an option there if you want to double arm your Clamp Champ. So that's going to bring us to his larger clamp weapon, which is his signature weapon. This thing looks almost identical to the vintage, and I'll show you that more in just a second. It's got the same handle on the bottom, so you can actually get him to hold that pretty nicely in either one of his hands. And you can see he balances pretty well with it. It's a large weapon. It's very oversized, so it will kind of throw him off balance a little bit. You've got to find the right position to get him standing with it there. But I will say it's pretty lightweight. It feels a little bit lighter than the vintage one, but not by much. And, you know, it's the same kind of thing. It's fully unpainted. It's just molded in like this swirly silver plastic, and you do have a push button here. And let me show you guys how the feature works on this. By pressing down on this button on top, the clamp comes forward. It just flings outwards. Now, that is different from the vintage Clamp Champ weapon. So here you can click those back in place. Boom. So I want to kind of bring in the vintage clamp, because I want to show these side by side so you can see what they look like. They're not too different in the overall design. The vintage one's got a red button while the new one is silver. But the vintage one worked different in that when you pulled the button back, the clamp kind of sprung forward and went backwards. It's a very satisfying action feature. Honestly, I'm a bit bummed that we don't have that with the new one. The new one just goes out and stays out. I always loved the way that this sprung back and forth. Also, I gotta be honest, the vintage one feels a little more solid. This one feels a lot flimsier. Now, I do want to show you guys like how this would work for grabbing your figures for anybody that wants to use the action features here. Like Ninjor is a great one to try it with. You know, if we want to spring that around his body there. There we go. Like, you can actually pick up the figure. I mean, it works well enough to do that. It helps that it's snagging underneath his armor there and lifting him up. So even though it feels like really lightweight, it does still seem to do the trick. I don't know. The vintage one is just so fun though. Like, that does feel more solid. And I don't know. I love that. I've always loved that vintage action feature. So I am being nitpicky, and I'm bummed that they changed the way that the feature works, but at least we still have a feature, so I will give it a positive for that part of it. All right, guys, it's comparison time. So I just got done showing you guys the vintage clamp. Let's go ahead and get the vintage Clamp Champ action figure standing alongside the new one. He totally follows suit with what we've been seeing throughout Origins, where the new one is so much brighter in color than the vintage one. You can see the vintage one is just so much more kind of subdued, darker tones and everything, where the new one's got very bright blue, very bright red, and you can also see the difference in the face sculpt sculpt looking at these two side by side. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in the Masters of the Universe Classics Clamp Champ, just because I love kind of showing the comparison side by side with the 7-inch collector-driven line versus the new Origins lineup. Now that one also didn't have an action feature in the clamp at all, so kudos to the new one for putting an action feature back in it. And there you guys go. There is a look at the Masters of the Universe Origins Clamp Champ. I'm being a little nitpicky with the action feature on the clamp because otherwise, I really like this figure. And this is another one that I'm really glad that we got so early on in the line because he was a later release in the vintage toy line. I definitely think he deserves this prominent spot right here at the forefront of the Origins lineup. I love that we got so many extras with him, so really solid figure all around. Clamp Champ is starting to hit store shelves right now. He's been showing up at Target alongside the other Battle Armor figures, but you can also get them from a lot of the online retailers, places like Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth, so I'll definitely link to that in the video description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time.
The Toys of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is available for pre-order now. This official guidebook is published by Dark Horse Books and features over 750 pages of photos and information on your favorite He-Man and She-Ra action figures. And don't miss out on the exclusive bundle pack available for pre-order now from PowerCon. This bundle includes the official guide as well as an exclusive character guide supplement that you won't be able to buy anywhere else. Don't miss out. You have the power.